Praise the Lord, everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we are opening up an incredibly fascinating ancient text, Genesis chapter 41. But we aren't just reading dry history today. No, we're unpacking a powerful personal masterclass on exactly how to thrive during inevitable crises. Whether you're thinking about your own life, your family's future, or maybe your business, this text holds some seriously profound, strategic wisdom.
And it brilliantly illustrates the central question we're exploring today. How exactly do you prepare for the absolute worst when times are at their absolute best? Usually when things are going great, human nature just tells us to sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride, right? But as we're about to see, true wisdom requires us to completely shift our perspective on how we handle these seasons of unprecedented abundance. Okay, let's dive right into part 1, the troubling dreams. So, our story opens with literally the most powerful man in the world at the time, Pharaoh. He's standing by the Nile River, which is the total lifeblood of Egypt, and he experiences two deeply disturbing nightmares that completely baffle all the wise men of his court. Let's think about exactly what he saw. First, 7 attractive plump cows come up out of the Nile, followed by 7 ugly thin cows. The thin cows literally eat the plump ones, but they stay just as skinny and ugly as before. No way, right? Then, the exact same thing happens with grain. 7 plump, good ears are swallowed up by 7 thin ears that are blighted by the east wind. Think of this in modern terms for a second. It's like a massive, unprecedented economic boom that is suddenly and completely swallowed up by a devastating market crash. A crash so severe that all the previous wealth just vanishes. Poof, leaving literally no trace it was ever there. Which brings us to part 2. From pit to palace. With the wise men failing miserably, the chief cupbearer remembers a young Hebrew servant who once interpreted a dream for him back in prison. And suddenly, this forgotten servant becomes the most important person in Egypt. Notice the dramatic, incredibly intimate shift in Joseph's personal story here. The text tells us they quickly brought him out of the pit. He shaved himself, which was a necessary Egyptian custom, changed his clothes, and walked right in to stand before the most powerful man on earth. In a matter of hours, he goes from being a forgotten, falsely accused prisoner in a dark pit to stepping onto the ultimate world stage. Talk about a whirlwind. Now, when Pharaoh tells Joseph, "Hey, I have heard it said of you that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it," look at Joseph's response. He says, "It is not in me. God will give Pharaoh a favorable answer." The crucial point here is Joseph's immense humility and grounded character. Even when he's handed the ultimate networking opportunity, the chance to totally puff up his own resume to the king, he absolutely refuses to take the credit himself. He points the glory directly to God. And that leads us to part 3, decoding the divine message. So Joseph listens to Pharaoh's vivid dreams and instantly brings clarity to the chaos, explaining that God is revealing exactly what he is about to do. Let's trace this timeline and see how this all builds. After 2 whole years of just waiting in prison, Joseph outlines a 14-year cycle that is about to hit the nation. First, there will come 7 years of great plenty throughout all the land of Egypt. Fantastic, right? But immediately following them will arise 7 years of severe famine. And here is the truly terrifying part. The text says all the plenty will be forgotten, and the famine will consume the land. The doubling of the dream means this timeline is fixed by God, and it's happening shortly. All right, part 4, 3 steps for survival. Because honestly, just knowing a crisis is coming isn't enough. You actually have to act. This is where Joseph pivots from being a mere dream interpreter to a master-level state strategist. Here are his 3 actionable steps for daily application pulled right out of the text. Step 1. Pharaoh needs to select a discerning and wise man to oversee the land. This is the core principle of seeking wise counsel and leadership. Step 2. Appoint overseers to take 1/5 of the produce during the 7 plentiful years. This is all about saving a specific non-negotiable portion during the good times. And step 3. Gather the food and store it under Pharaoh's authority in the cities. This means building a strict, highly accessible, decentralized reserve. And this brilliantly illustrates the real core of his strategy, the 20% rule. By taking 1/5 or 20% of the produce during the years of plenty, Joseph creates a practical, actionable mechanism to build a massive safety net, completely without starving the population in the present. They still have 80% of a massive boom to live on. But that 20% is strictly locked away as a reserve against the years of famine so that the land may not perish. Real-world, practical planning at its finest. Which brings us to part 5, Rise of a Leader.
Pharaoh and all his servants are absolutely amazed by this proposal. Recognizing Joseph's unmatched discernment and wisdom, Pharaoh immediately appoints him. And the specifics of his vindication are just astounding. Pharaoh says, "See, I have set you over all the land of Egypt." Just like that, Joseph is set over Pharaoh's house. He's given the king's own signet ring, handing him royal authority. He's clothed in garments of fine linen, a gold chain is placed around his neck, and he rides in the second chariot while people actually call out, "Bow the knee." He is elevated to absolute second in command, complete with a new Egyptian name, Zephanath-Paneah, and a high-status wife, Asenath. But what's incredibly fascinating here is the age factor. The text notes that Joseph was exactly 30 years old when he entered the service of Pharaoh. Think about that for a second. At 30, he begins this massive, unprecedented logistical project. He goes out from the presence of Pharaoh and travels throughout all the land of Egypt. And during those 7 plentiful years, as the earth produces abundantly, he methodically puts the food from the fields directly into the surrounding cities. But amidst all this massive state planning, we get an incredibly touching emotional climax in Joseph's personal life. Before the famine even arrives, he has 2 sons. He names the firstborn Manasseh, saying, "God has made me forget all my hardship." And the second he names Ephraim, saying, "God has made me fruitful in the land of my affliction." I love this because it makes Joseph such a relatable human. He isn't just some emotionless administrator. He is a man who has triumphed over immense personal struggle, betrayal, and trauma, and is finally finding real healing and fruitfulness. Let's move to part 6, surviving the famine. So Joseph executed the logistics perfectly. He stored up grain in such great abundance he literally had to stop measuring it. He decentralized the storage in the surrounding cities. And exactly as Joseph had warned, those 7 years of plenty came to an end, and the famine began. But this wasn't just a local drought. The text says there was famine in all lands, and it spread over all the earth. But because of Joseph's discipline, his 20% rule, and his wise planning, in all the land of Egypt there was bread. When the people cried out, Joseph opened the storehouses, and eventually the whole earth came to Egypt to buy grain from Joseph simply because the famine was so severe everywhere else. So what does this all mean for us? The crucial point we're left with today is this: how are you preparing your own storehouses right now? Joseph's masterclass proves that the absolute best time to prepare for the ugly thin cows is when the attractive plump cows are grazing right there in your life. Whether it's your finances, your marketable skills, or building an emergency fund, are you applying that 20% rule? Are you actively seeking wise counsel? I challenge you to take Joseph's ancient wisdom and start building your safety net today. Well, if you found this explainer valuable, please take a quick moment to like, share, and subscribe so we can keep bringing you more deep dives just like this one. See you next time.